Welcome to Women Don't Do That, where we empower you with inspiration, knowledge, and skills to redefine your boundaries and unleash your potential. I'm Stephanie Minton, founder and CEO of Beacon North Strategies and your guide. Small town girl turned CEO while navigating career, motherhood, ADHD, and chronic migraines. Our conversations range from interviews with visionary women to solo episodes filled with actionable insights. We are your hub for turning what ifs into let's go. Are you ready to redefine your possible? Let's get started. Today, I'm excited for the podcast to be joined by Willow Allen. She is a model, a mom, and a social work student. She takes us from the Arctic to international magazines. We talk about identity, motherhood, and mental health. And she shares powerful advice for women navigating ambition and real life and motherhood. You don't want to miss this one. Welcome, Willow.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. We like to kick things off by getting to know guests better. So, what does life look like for you right now?
Right now, I would definitely say this summer has been so different than the rest of the year. I'm still at university, and so from September to April, it's life looks so different than summer. This summer has been so full of traveling and modeling and going up north to see my family. So it's definitely a busy time right now for sure.
And what university do you go to?
I go to the University of Manitoba. I'm
Mhm.
pursuing a degree in social work. And so I am in my last year now, starting September, and I'm actually in my practicum. So I am working remotely with the government of the Northwest Territories in cultural safety and anti-racism. So I'm really looking forward to this year and just being able to also settle down a little bit and be in one place.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's really exciting. I've been to that university, and that's fantastic. It's a big deal to, do these degrees and get them done, and you're doing it while working and also a mom. So there's lots of different things to juggle to make that all happen.
Yeah.
The other question we like to ask people off the top is what motivates you to live your best life?
Think the biggest thing, oh my goodness, so many things motivate me. Like one thing that I can think of is just like how becoming a mom and how I want to raise my baby and just seeing the world kind of like from a different set of eyes and just
Hmm.
like wanting to create a space that is like nurturing and good and educating him on our culture and like seeing all the beauty in it and how valuable it was for me growing up, thinking about myself when I was small and the lessons that I learned and the way that my parents incorporated so much of our culture into my life. And so being a mom is what motivates me. And a big thing too that like has motivated me all throughout my life, I think has always been my parents and my grandparents and my family and my community. I think once I started, like even just graduating high school, I just remember how proud my family was and then going away to university and then everything that I've done in modeling and in social media, just how proud I see my family being and just the words of encouragement that are spoken into me when I'm in my community. And so that
Mm.
definitely, like seeing such a good thing come out of the things that I've been doing and the light and the love that's spoken into those things just make me feel like I'm on the right path.
Wow, that's so encouraging. And we all need that sometimes, right? To keep going and to do the hard things. And so I'm really thankful for you that you have that kind of community and support around you. You talk a lot about the importance of community, and you grew up in Inuvik, Northwest Territories, is that correct?
Mhm, yeah.
What do you wish most people, more people, I guess, understood about life in the Arctic?
I think a lot of the perception that I got that I didn't realize was the perception when I moved down was like how undesirable the cold is.
Hmm.
And just, oh, I could never live in that, like the darkness and all of those things. And they kind of just see the cold and the darkness, and they think, like, no, that's all there is, and how undesirable it may seem. But there's so much to life up there that, like, you would never know and see. I think about the TV series North of North that came out.
Yes,
And I don't know if you've seen it,
I
but
have.
yeah, it paints the Arctic in like such a realistic way. Like I honestly think it's such a wonderful representation of like the community and life in the North and the culture and the people. And so I love how something like that is like changing the perception of the North. And that's something that I've always really wanted to do as well, and just highlighting the North and Inuvialuit culture in such a positive way. And I think to see people like seeing that more now is just really nice, to not just have like a negative response when they think about the Arctic.
Yeah, I have really enjoyed watching that show, and I was actually going to ask you about how similar it is to life in the North because sometimes those two things don't really align, right? And it's like, how much of it does it actually represent? I would also, say to people listening, if you are interested in learning more about like the culture or what life is like there, that following your content, and we'll make sure to share that in the show notes, is a great way to do that because you share that side of your life with people as well. And I remember when you had your baby, for instance, you sharing was it a baby hammock that went over the crib?
Yeah, baby swing. Yeah.
And like that's something I had never seen or heard of before, right? And so it's a great way to get to know more about what life is like in the North. And also just some of the important issues that you share. I remember one time you sharing about grocery shopping and the price of groceries up north and mentioning that in some other communities it's even costs more than that. Just sharing
Yeah,
some of those experiences.
it definitely, I know, yeah, it's crazy to like, that's so what you're used to. And then you go down south and then you see how different people have it. And then you think,
Mm.
that's not fair. Like, why are we paying such ridiculous? But we just are so used to that at this
Hmm.
point. But it does make life so much more difficult in smaller communities when you go to the grocery store and it's like three times what you would pay down here.
Yes, and I feel like with COVID and with the tariffs, right? Like the prices are rising, and yet you think that means that people in more remote communities are paying even more and have had really high prices like that for a long time. And I think other people are starting to understand a little bit more maybe about what that means for people in other parts of the world.
Yeah, I feel like you can tell people about it, and but unless you really see and can compare these items, that's why I loved sharing those videos about that, because then people would say, oh, for me, like milk costs this much. And then you really see just how much of a difference it is. And
Hmm.
then when you get like a load of groceries and people say that would have been like $80 where I'm from, but it was like $200 for us.
Yes. I had clients come to Ottawa one time from the Northwest Territories. I think they were from the Lutzelk'e Dene area. And they were telling me that the cold in Ottawa, where I live, is more humid. So it had this like wetness to it that they didn't feel like they had the same experience where they were from. So even though it was cold, it was like a different kind of cold. And I found that really interesting.
Yeah, it's so different. It's very different. In the Arctic, where I'm from, it's considered a desert in the winter because of how dry the cold is. And I find it to be like there's so much snow that it feels like more insulated, if that makes sense. Like
Hmm.
things feel quieter and more still. up there.
Hmm.
And and I think a big difference that I find too, like the humidity. I
Hmm.
can't even breathe when it's super humid because I'm not used to it. Um,
Yes.
but I think like a main difference is like when you're up north, like you dress right. Like you
Hmm.
dress for it. And
Yes.
like people dress in their like traditional, like they've been dressing for the cold for like forever, for thousands of years. And so I think like when I come down south, it's like, oh, I understand why you guys don't like winter. It's because you guys don't dress like you're in like an open jacket.
Yeah.
Like when I'm home, I'm never cold
Hmm.
because we're dressed, right? And so we spend so much time outside. Whereas
Right.
down here, I can in my little sneakers.
Yeah, and it's different, as you well know, in different parts of Canada too, right? Because I had a friend who came from Manitoba to Ottawa for university, and she's like, "You guys spend so much time outside in the winter here. Like we don't do that." And our winter, I think, is slightly warmer, so that's one reason. But in Ottawa, you will find people dressing more and going out and doing activities. And I always tell people, like, your winter will be so terrible if you don't go out and learn to ice skate and snowmobile if you can, or like toboggan and all of these things that if you're just stuck inside all of the time, uh, you can't enjoy it. So I often tell people when they first move to Ottawa, like, please, like, get some proper winter gear. Yeah, if we all had sealskin, we would be even warmer.
Yeah, like there's so much to do in the north, like in the winter time, because we have like such a culture that revolves around that and being able to get around on the land, and go skidooing and all of those things. And so like springtime, winter has always been the most fun for me being home because in the summer it's like, well, you can only boat around and then it's hard to get around on the land
Mm,
and things. But with skidoo, you can go and we go out to our cabin so much easier. And skidooing has always been like as a kid like the funnest thing ever, and so I love getting to go out and do that. And yeah, like going hunting and all of those things, like there's so much that revolves around the winter.
hmm. I like what you shared about how the snow kind of insulates the ground because I often say to people, like, I don't really like that in between period where it's cold, but there's no snow because you don't really feel like you need the snow to do the fun stuff, right? I'm like, I just feel like you can't do the winter stuff, but it's cold. And then when the snow is down, it does somehow feel slightly less cold. So
Yeah, or when
maybe
it
there's some
feels wet
science.
and everything's slushy, like that just that doesn't feel fun. Your boots get wet and yeah.
Yes. I want to jump a little bit more to talking about your modeling career and how did that begin and what has that looked like as you started doing that?
Yeah, so I moved down south for school when I was in grade 11. And and then I went on to go to university. There's no universities in the north, and so I went to university in Edmonton, and that's where I first signed with my modeling agency. I got scouted on Instagram, and then I kind of it opened me up to the idea of doing that, and I never really thought about it before. And so I was like, oh, maybe this is like a good way to, make friends in a new place and be involved and do something. Because I was like, what is there to do in a city? Like I I can't scoot around here. And so I ended up applying to my mother agency now, who is Mode Models International. And as soon as I moved there, I met with them. And then 3 months later, they sent me to Singapore for 3 months. So it was like a really quick jump into it. And at first, like, obviously, my family was like so skeptical of like, why are they sending me here? Like, what's happening? And so my mom went with me for the first 2 weeks. And we were like, oh, maybe, this is a real thing. Maybe it's all right. And so my career, I think, took off really fast. And it's been such a journey since then, getting to travel doing it. And see myself doing all these different ads that I had never saw myself doing before.
It's quite an interesting experience and to be able to travel globally like that. Were there some things that surprised you, like that maybe you didn't know or you had certain perceptions about being a model?
I think one thing that maybe not necessarily about modeling, but I think when I traveled, I didn't really realize like how many people didn't know anything about like Inuit or the Arctic or any of those things. Like I think that was what inspired me a lot to start sharing and educating was like people's reaction to hearing about life in the Arctic and just how surprised they were to because growing up like that's all I knew.
Hmm.
And so to just learn about people's perceptions of it, I think was like really not what I expected.
Yeah, I can appreciate that as somebody that grew up in the Ottawa Valley as a kid. I'm in my 40s now. I don't like we didn't learn that much about the Arctic. And as an adult, I have found you have to go and do the work yourself, right? Because you didn't learn about it before. I've had the pleasure of maybe once or twice for different work experiences going to the Inuit Children's Center in Ottawa. There's a lot of, well, you probably know this, but Inuit that live in Ottawa and spend some time with the kids there and seeing them learn their language. And it was really special.
Yeah, that's so nice. I remember like in school, the only thing that like we had our own like language class and ways of incorporating it into education from the textbooks. I think there's like a paragraph like this of Inuit
Mhm.
in like a math textbook, and that was all
Right.
I ever saw.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I know even when I travel globally as a Canadian, right, there's still people that think that we live in igloos and, like their perception even of kind of the broader Canadian context is also not correct.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Like in New York, it's just I I remember saying, "Oh, like Saskatchewan," and they couldn't even say it. They couldn't even say the word Saskatchewan. I was like, "Really? You don't even know about it?" And I remember being in at a job once, and I was like, "Oh, I'm from the Arctic," and they were like, "What? What is the Arctic? Like, is that like Antarctica?" And I was like, "No." And so it's like so crazy to like interact with people who don't know very much about like Canada when it's so large and it's right
Mhm.
there.
Hmm. My sister just got back from a trip where she drove from the Ottawa Valley to BC and back. And we did that when we were kids too. And it definitely makes you appreciate all the different cultures, the size of Canada. It is such a huge country. On the modeling side of things, have you found, so I'm in my 40s, and so in my experience, modeling feels like it's changed quite a bit for women, yet there's probably still lots of change to come. Have you noticed from when you've started to now, have there been some changes kind of in the modeling environment or in terms of more broader representation?
I definitely think there has been such a shift towards more diversity and more representation from like so many more people. I think that the beauty standard was like for so long just like white and blonde
Hmm.
and that's what you saw so much like on the runway and things like that. But there's definitely been, I remember when I first signed was the industry had already shifted quite a bit and it
Mm,
still has continued to since I've signed in that direction. But I remember them loving me so much because of my different features and
right.
because it I was unique in a way and there wasn't they had never signed an Inuit before. And when I signed with my agency in New York, they had never signed Indigenous Canadian before. And
Wow.
so I think that uniqueness is something that has become so desired. And one of the reasons why I felt like my agency felt like I would do so well. And so that's why I always encourage like Indigenous girls or men to sign because um, the world is shifting so much in that way. And people are looking for more of just Indigenous people and Indigenous features and to have them represent companies more. I think that shift has been such a positive one in the industry in the last few years.
Has that been a challenge for you to be the first in many of those rooms?
I think in ways, it felt like for me an advantage because then they wanted me for so many things
Mm,
to represent Indigenous people. But I think it definitely does in a way make me sad that it's like that we're in this year and
hmm.
there's so many beautiful Indigenous people out there that like I see them back home and I'm like, you could be a model, but you wouldn't think to do that. And I
Right,
didn't even think to do that up there because it's just not, it just doesn't feel like a thing up
right.
north or like in Indigenous communities down here. There's so many beautiful people that I think would do amazing.
Yeah, it's like I don't know if you feel this, Willow, but when you are the first at things, you're just by being you and doing the work that you're doing, like you are carving space for those people behind you, whether to open the minds in the industry or even just for um, other Indigenous people or people from the Arctic to be able to see themselves in those roles, like that's what it means to others.
There's a few Indigenous models that I have looked up to. There's not, and it's sad that there's not a lot, but
Hmm.
I love Koana Chasing Horse. I don't know if you know who she
I
is, but
don't think so.
yeah, she's an Alaskan native and she like also talks so much about issues in the north and just indigenous rights and things like that. And she's worked for so many amazing companies bringing that representation and she has her traditional tattoos and I think
Oh,
that also was really inspiring to know that like even because tattoos like typically weren't very accepted like in society and also
hmm.
in the modeling industry and to see her like traditional facial tattoos being represented in big campaigns and things I think also has been so inspiring to me and so I can
Hmm.
imagine how inspiring it would be for others as well.
Yes. Is there like a particular modeling job that stands out to you as one of the ones you were most excited to be part of or most proud of?
I think one that really, in a way, changed the trajectory of my career or even how I went about my career was a few years ago. Because I was just a model and I didn't do social media.
Hmm.
And when I got booked for jobs, like sometimes they wouldn't even know my background and I would tell them there.
Wow.
But one thing that really, I think, was a job for who I was as a Inuvialuit was when I did the cover of Owl magazine and I did a
Mm.
campaign for Canada Goose with her name is Victoria and she's a designer and she did a line with Canada Goose and she's Inuit and so the models that I got were her name is Shina and she is an Inuit influencer and Marika. And so it was us three that did this campaign and the cover, and it was just about being Inuit. And so I got to tell my story and like a page where I talked about my culture and where I'm from. stuff. And so I was so used to just being booked for, what I looked like, but not because of like who I was and getting to tell my story. And so I think that was a really significant job for me in that. And I remember talking to like Shaina and Marika because they're both influencers and just about how much they love getting to share culture. And I thought like
Mm.
I would love to do that. Like that sounds so wonderful. And so I think hearing their stories and meeting with them really inspired me to kind of do the same. And so that I think was a big turning point to like talking about my culture more on social media and really having that as like incorporating that into my work. And so I think that was a very special one for me.
That does sound really special, and it really feels like it brought out who you are and the things that you care about, which is always really exciting. I know that you're the mom of a toddler now, and uh, going through motherhood, preparing to be a mom, and you've been sharing that online, and now your baby is starting to be a toddler. What has becoming a mom been like for you in terms of like your identity and what that looks like for you?
I think it definitely has brought such a level of importance to remembering all of these things about my culture, remembering all these stories that my grandparents have told me, and just knowing how much responsibility I have to continue to pass these things down and just not wanting our culture to be lost. And I see it like it's so much of like when I'm just taking it in and all the things that my dad is telling me and my grandparents and just getting to really live and experience it and hear those stories and just the realization that like I will be telling these stories that I was heard too one
Mm,
day and making sure August, as a kid, I remember all the pictures of me in my first parka
mhm,
that my grandmother made me and my bin of all of my traditional clothes when I was a kid and just knowing like I want August to be able to wear those things and know that that was like those were his first pair of mucklucks as a kid and just have that deep connection as well that I grew up having and not just in hearing about it, but also making sure that he knows the North and is familiar with it and familiar with my family and our community. And it can be kind of hard sometimes, like being down south for university and then
mhm.
having to be really intentional about going up every year, especially considering how expensive and hard it can be.
Yes.
But yeah, that's, I think, one of the things, one of the deep realizations that I've had as a mother that I know is going to be so important and a big role that I have to play in that.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so important, and I can see how much you value that and how important it is to take that time. Um, my husband and I are very lucky in some ways because we grew up in the same area in a rural community outside of Ottawa. And so it's always funny because when we go home, we tell the kids we're going home. And then we come back to Ottawa, we say we're going home. Because there's like, right? And there is not in the same differences obviously that you have in the Arctic, but going from rural to urban, I find the way that my husband and I grew up was very different than what our kids have grown up with. But my sister has a lot of property there, and I like to be able to take them there to do the snowmobiling and do some of those things that we got to do as kids that now that they're growing up in the city, they don't always have access to do. So I really appreciate that I'm able to go back and do some of those things.
Yeah.
When you were getting back into work, you're getting back into school, how has that looked like with layering on that you're a mom too?
It's definitely been quite the challenge, I will say, especially like I gave birth and I in January
Hmm.
and I was still in school for those like 4 months.
Wow.
So I remember emailing my profs like, I won't be in class. I'm giving birth, but I'll be there next week. And then just needing to push deadlines. So it definitely was very challenging to juggle all of that. And then I feel really fortunate that during pregnancy and before, had built a career in social media,
Hmm.
just modeling. And so I was able to continue to do that like throughout pregnancy when I wasn't really taking many modeling jobs, obviously,
Right.
and postpartum and stuff. And so it was kind of nice that I was able to have that still and be working, but it definitely was hard when August was so little. I'm fortunate though that I got to do all of those things from home.
Mm.
Just be in my Zoom meetings holding my baby.
Right. Right.
But
Yes.
I feel lucky too that my husband is also in university. And so we were both home full time always and still am. And so I think now that August is, um, he's 18 months. And so now that he's 18 months, and I know a lot of mothers have to go back to work and their babies have to go in daycare.
Hmm.
I feel like even though it was really tough at the start, I feel really fortunate that I am able to still work from home and have navigated how to do that with August still here, like with me, and how to like manage like Kill took August to the park right now and things like that. And so getting to still be home with him, I think, has been the benefit, but definitely a big challenge navigating how we're juggling that.
Yes, and I imagine because of your career, like figuring that out is kind of constant, right? Like you've been in New York part of the summer, so that changes things a bit. And um, different stages changed things too. When I opened my business, it was really nice because I was able to be home for the girls after school. And so that was really nice because I could kind of have that high-powered career, but then still be accessible to them when they first got home from school and wanted to share all the things. And my girls are older, they're 12, almost 12, and 14. And so they've been home a lot this summer. We have a pool, and so they're around when I'm trying to get work done. And there was one day, this doesn't happen very often, but there was one day I'm like, I need to go to a coffee shop. Like I just keep getting interrupted. But for the most part, I'm quite happy to have that kind of balance, and they get used to it, right? My girls will come home with a bunch of friends, and if I'm like, I have a call, you need to be quiet, they'll just be quiet, and they get used to it, you know? So people say, well, how do you have like 15 kids in your house right now? I'm like, yep, but they know when to be quiet.
Yeah, I am like, oh no, I gotta go to a coffee shop. It's too much for me.
Well, toddlers are different because they don't like entertain themselves the same way, right? My kids are in the stage of I just want to be with my friends, and I'm trying to start to uh, develop the skills to be an adult, and so I want my independence. And so it's a different stage.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice to still have the naps right now though. I will
Yeah, that
say
would be
a
good.
3 hour nap.
Yes.
I live for that nap.
I knew, well, this is, if I knew some moms who, when their kids, I did this a little bit with my kids, but when they were done having naps, they would still have their kids go and have like an hour of quiet time or something where they could read in their bed or just have some quiet time. And I think it's so good because it's at least a little bit of period of time where they're not near technology, right? Or you have to listen to your own voice or to just entertain yourself a little bit. And I often thought, as they were growing up and getting more and more tiring, I thought, oh, it would be nice to still have quiet time.
Yeah,
I should have
yeah,
kept it up.
yeah. I feel so fortunate too that like it's Kale, my husband, is home all the time. And so I'm like, I need to go take a bath or something. I need to
Right.
just relax. I need to lay in bed for like half an hour.
Yeah, I just need a
And
break
so
here.
yeah, it's nice to be able to do that. Kale is in school for education, so he's going to be a teacher. So his schedule will be the same as August's when he's in school. So summers off, same holidays, all those things. So I feel really fortunate that
Yes.
the way that we did life, we're able to just be so involved, the both of us,
Mm-hmm.
present and home with August.
Mm-hmm. For your experience in modeling, has there been any challenges for you now that you are a mother? Like, have you faced challenges because of that? Or is that kind of like an old, antiquated thing that used to happen?
I don't think I'm actually surprised that I haven't because I always had the perception that like once you had kids, then you were done. I remember calling my agents to tell them I was pregnant, or even just initially deciding that we wanted to start a family. I
Hmm.
had come to terms with the fact that like I am okay to be done modeling now and start a family. And so I remember calling my agents and saying like I'm pregnant, like farewell, you guys. It was nice knowing you. And they were like, well, what are you talking about? Just like come back when you're like ready. Like some people wait 3 months, some people wait a year. Like take the time you need and then let us know when you're ready to come back. And I was like, oh, and I thought we were done.
Right.
And so it honestly feels like I could have been done at that point when I decided, I feel like I've accomplished what I really wanted to accomplish in it. And now everything now just feels like I'm a bonus. Like I'm grateful to like continue to do it still and happy to be able to. And it feels like it hasn't gotten in the way of anything
Mm.
that I had built before, or like the momentum has like slowed down, or that
Right.
like people don't want to book me because of that. I still feel like um I'm still desired the same, and it just feels like when I go on set and I tell people and they like love to hear about August and things like that, and still being able to like be in New York and sign with new agencies and stuff, and that doesn't feel like it holds me back at all. I
Hmm.
think it does make it a little bit more challenging that when I go to New York, I
Hmm.
bring August and Kale, and so I can't live in the model apartment like I used to,
Right.
things like that. But that would, I would say, has been the biggest like challenge in it.
Right. Yeah. Oh, that's really good to hear. Because yeah, I think my perception would have been kind of what maybe would have happened in the past. I think it's interesting because I imagine by cultural standards, I know for me, I had my kids around the same age that you did. And by cultural perspective, sometimes people can think that that's young. And I sometimes think women often will wait till they're older to have kids and they're very concerned about their careers. And I found, at least for me, and part of this might be the Canadian system, that it didn't really hurt me at all. And when I had my kids, I was young in my career anyways, where you're already kind of in those early stage roles versus when some of my friends now are at like director levels and trying to take time off to have kids. And so that's just sometimes something I think about is, cultural perceptions about what may or may not be best for people.
I think especially too, like me and Kale still being in university and not even necessarily being in our careers yet.
Hmm.
I think there probably is the perception of like, oh, like maybe you should wait until, but I think our circumstances like have just allowed it for us to both be home, which is something that I'm so grateful for, which I think otherwise it would have been really tough if we
Hmm.
weren't. And
Hmm.
so I think um there's always a debate of like when is the right time
Yes.
and like just waiting for the right time. And I am so happy we didn't wait for that. And
Hmm.
for us, it definitely did feel like the right time.
Yeah, and I think that's important, right? It's like everybody's timing is different. And I also feel like people sometimes, like you said, like wait for a perfect time and there's not always that kind of like perfect window, right? To do these types of things that are really life-changing and important events in our lives. You mentioned about your university work in social work and your importance that you place on mental health. Why did you choose social work in terms of going to university?
Think a big inspiration for me was my mom. My mom was a social worker. And so I feel like I was so raised with those values and just that mentality. And it was something that I always felt like I understood so well and something that I was also passionate about. And so I would always hear about, what my mom is doing and just like how much she cares about those social issues as well and is like fighting so passionately to change things and to create better lives for people and help um, everybody on different walks of life. And that's something that I've always just felt so deeply passionate about as well. And I think that there's that element. And then my dad, I think, also inspires me a lot too, of just how loving and kind he is to everybody and how much he cares about our community and our culture. And I think um, those two things combined of like just the pride in being indigenous and how special it is, how healing it can be, and the wonderful ways to highlight it and incorporate into people's life in a way that is wellness. And then my mom, who is a social worker and she is such a strong leader in that, in creating change. I think me going into it with those two perspectives has just really inspired me to, I think, create a system that supports Indigenous people and Indigenous wellness. And so being in these roles that help people, but also being Indigenous and at some level understanding the community and
Hmm.
their needs and their values just feels like this was what I was meant to do.
Oh, I love that. That's very inspiring. What advice would you give to listeners, maybe those that are trying to follow their dreams but navigate things like ambition, identity, motherhood? What advice would you give them?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think just like know what's in your heart and what you're really passionate about and just pursue it, even if it seems like scary or daunting, to just know that like you are so much capable than I feel like a person thinks they are, and just going into it with like an open heart and like really telling yourself like I am so capable and
Hmm.
so I have so much to offer, I think has been something that has been spoken into my life that made me really feel like, maybe I can do this. Like it's whatever you want to do, like just pursue it and do it.
I think that's really good advice because we know statistically that women often take themselves out of the running for things, right? And I feel like that is really, really good advice, Willow. I want to end by doing some quick rapid fire questions. Can you share a rule you've broken that turned out to be a great decision?
Oh, um, I would say that I had this idea that I always had to take everything and do everything and every opportunity that presented itself to me, like I had to just be booked and busy and working. But I think making the decision to really slow down and let myself enjoy things more and just allow myself to be home more even because I'm not, just constantly ready and available and working, I think has been really nice for me. And like a letting myself take a break and having a baby and start a family. I think that's a rule that I kind of had for myself and not thinking, I need to do everything all the time. I think
Hmm.
just made me prioritize like my own self-care and mental health, and that was really well worth it.
Hmm. Absolutely. Who is a woman who continually inspires you?
I think for sure, like I mentioned before, my mom. My
Hmm.
mom is a social worker, and she spent, my childhood was the director of Child and Family Services, and then she went on to be the CEO of Health and Social Services, and then went on to do special projects for cultural safety, and has just had so many roles of influence and
Mm.
a deep passion for helping. in my community up north. And
Mm,
so I think that has definitely inspired my career a lot and who I am.
she sounds really amazing. What's one book that has significantly impacted your perspective?
I think someone would usually say some sort of like self-help book, but a book that I love that I think really impacted me and my identity and like knowing my culture better was a book called Call Me Ishmael. And it was written by an elder in my community, an India elder who's actually my my grandmother's sister's husband. So I would call him my Dadak Ishmael. And he wrote all about his childhood and Inuvialuit stories and legends and life in the North and what it looked like for us specifically. And I think getting to read that and understand myself better and my culture and my heritage has just been really like inspiring to me and motivating to me in knowing myself and
Mm.
being so confident in that identity.
Thank you for sharing that. That sounds like a really important perspective, like you mentioned.
Mhm.
Thank you so much for spending your time with me today and your advice that you have for women and just sharing your story and how you're walking through things and breaking barriers. Thank you so much, Willow.
Yes, I am so happy to have gotten the opportunity to talk to you and share all of these things.
Thanks for joining us on Women Don't Do That. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a rating or review. Connect with us on Instagram at Women Don't Do That and visit our website www.womendon'tdothat.com for more details. Join our Patreon to support our work. Find all of the links in the show notes. Remember, you have the power to transform your what ifs into let's go. Together, let's redefine your possible. Until next time. The opinions expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of Women Don't Do That, Stephanie Mitten, or affiliated brands.